What would you say to the people who think that what you do is illegal?
I would tell them that I don't want to answer this question.
If my hand suddenly sprouted a bearded mouth and started stabbing itself with a crab claw, I'm probably pretty sure I'd saw my arm off. But LG is betting it'll make you want to buy a smartphone instead. That, plus coverage of the latest All New HTC One leaks, and a leaker himself await us later in the feature segment on episode 086 of the Pocketnow Weekly, the once-a-week audio podcast where we discuss smartphones, tablets, and wearables. From a cold but sunny Boston, Massachusetts, I'm your host, Michael Fisher, editorial director at Pocketnow, and I'm joined on today's show by Chief News Editor Stephen Schenk. Good afternoon to you.
Hey, I just realized this should be the Get Smart episode of our Pocketnow Weekly.
It should. We're all taking off our shoes and putting them against our heads.
Outstanding.
And we're also joined by the man I never agree with. No, not Anton, the other one. Senior Editor Taylor Martin. Hey-ho.
Hello, can you pass some cake through the mic?
Pass some cake through the mic. I can't. But you know, it's funny. I don't get your joke, but I'm gonna go with it.
Come on.
What is it? Is it a Get Smart joke? See, it doesn't. What is it?
Oh my gosh! You were just referencing the LG commercial.
Oh, okay. So I watched half of that LG commercial on mute because I was in the Dunkin' Donuts rushing to get coffee before this podcast, and I was horrified. I think I was actively sweating in nervous fear.
I wrote that whole post only having watched maybe the first 85% of it. Then afterwards, I watched the end.
Oh my gosh, I did the same thing.
So I didn't see the end. Oh my god, I was about to come down on you, Taylor, for not seeing that. So you watched it all the way through.
Yeah, like I watched only like 80-some%. And then I went back because I was showing someone else, and then I thought it ended because it showed LG or something. Like it,
the logo was up and everything, right?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, it's over. So I clicked out of it, and then I opened it up again to show someone else, and I just let it run, and then I turned my head, and I'm like, oh, it's not over. It gets so much worse. It gets
so weirder. All right, we're going to talk about this. I want a play-by-play rundown of this commercial later on. I do want to address, folks, if you're just tuning in for the first time, we split some of our shows into a news segment and a feature segment. The news will come first, and the feature about an hour later. So that feature, if you're just tuning in for our interview with Ev Leaks, is called out in the time codes in the show notes. So jump around if you want to. But we do urge you to stick around for the news because, as you can tell, we're going to talk about some crazy stuff today. But first, a very brief announcement. We have the Galaxy Tab Pro 10.1 and 8.4 in the house. My 10.1 is here. The 8.4 is on our Twitter, Taylor Martin. So expect some tablet coverage. I think we've been kind of dry on tablet coverage for a couple weeks, right, Taylor?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I haven't had a 10-inch Android tablet in the Boston office since the Xperia Tablet Z review last, spring or whatever it was. So this is going to be fun.
The last tablet I reviewed was the Note Pro, the 2014 edition Galaxy Note 10.1 , I think.
2014 edition Note 10.1. Yeah, wait, hold on.
That one or the iPad Mini with Retina display?
Wait,
I did
the
at the end of the year.
10.1 Note is different than the 10.1 Note Pro. Right?
Yes.
Because we don't have that one. Yeah.
Wait, no, there is no 10.1 Note Pro. It's
only the 12.
It's a Tab Pro.
Right.
It's a Tab Pro 10.1. This is so confusing.
And I have the Tab Pro 10.1, yeah.
I very nearly posted a story last night about it was about the Tab Pro. I thought it was the Note Pro. This is so awful with the naming.
It's absurd. If you watch my unboxing video from yesterday, I was going to cut it out and put it in as an outtake. I just left it in where I was comparing the Note 3 and the Tab Pro, and I just couldn't keep them straight.
No.
Crazy brand names. What?
Since you have emailed me saying that the Tab Pro 8.4 is coming to me, I've called it the Tab Pro 8.3. I've called it the Galaxy Tab 8.3.
Yep.
The Galaxy Note 8.3. I mean, just, oh my gosh.
And all the while, we're still making the mistake occasionally of saying Galaxy Gear 2 when it is not exactly Gear. It's the Gear 2. And then even within the brands, they can't decide whether it's Tab Pro all one word with Pro all caps or two separate words.
Verizon started today selling the Note Pro 12.2 LTE, and they're using it two words, not all caps for the Pro.
And on some Samsung pages, like on Samsung's website, on some pages, they're not even consistent internally with this branding. So
why bother?
So how are we expected to be? Oh, it's crazy. So anyway, yes, thank you for that. The Note Pro 12.2 is launched on Verizon. Let's jump right into Android. So, kicking off the Android news segment, Apple has apparently failed. Well, there's been a big settlement awarded in this court case between Apple and Samsung, but Apple has failed to convince the court of the need for a ban on Samsung products. Where was this, Stephen? What's the story here?
This is that ongoing case that dates back years and years now. We got our the first jury award was in the summer of 2012, and since then, Samsung and Apple have been going back to court arguing no, that original award, which was for slightly over $1 billion in Apple's favor, was calculated incorrectly, and they've been going back and forth. Last fall, Apple finally started getting the numbers worked out, so it's getting like pennies short of $1 billion. It's 900 million something. So it didn't get everything it initially wanted, but it's in a pretty good place. And it also was allowed back then to apply for a permanent injunction on the imports of these devices, which today we learn is not going to happen. But it's kind of a moot point because this case, because it's been going on for so very long, deals with some seriously old hardware that I don't think is even being sold anywhere anymore.
What is the hardware that's being contested here? Do we know?
I don't have a list off the top of my head, but I know that this month they're starting a new case. It's different patents, but the same song and dance. And this new case deals with phones like the Galaxy S3. So that's the new one that hasn't started yet. So we're looking at pre-Galaxy S3 stuff.
Yeah, there was some stuff mentioned in the story you cite, the news post you cite from December of 2013. They were talking about the old Galaxy S 4G and the first generation Galaxy Tab 10.1. So, yeah. Crazy stuff.
Snooze.
Super relevant stuff here, guys.
I know, right? Yeah.
It begs the question, why is Apple pushing so hard and spending all this money in court trying to block the importation of devices that probably aren't being sold? Is it they feel like they have to make a point, or what?
It's probably to base new lawsuits on.
To set a
established precedent, right?
Yeah.
Or and also, I mean, if you have a reasonable chance of winning, then if I were in Apple's shoes, I'm not sure if I would care whether I was suing over like a dumb phone from 2003. If I was going to win a massive settlement, I would.
Well, I'd fight for the settlement. I just don't know that the injunction benefits Apple.
Oh, true. Yeah.
In any direct way. I mean,
because nobody's buying a Galaxy S 4G anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless it's on Craigslist, in which case, watch out, eBay buyers.
And by the time that someone gets to a settlement, aren't they going to spend almost that much in court anyway? They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars in court, like literally hundreds of millions in court.
It's like the biggest whizzing match ever between these two, and I think that's
what it amounts to, really, honestly.
Yeah. It's a shame. I mean, it's important news because of the size of the settlement and because but ultimately it's just one more slog in this eternal punch fest that. It never looks like it's going to get resolved. But that's for people with more legal experience than I to argue over. Let's kind of move off of that. I just wanted to touch on it quickly and talk about the biggest leak of the week, which happened, I think, on Sunday night. Was that when I called you, Taylor?
Yeah, you interrupted my Bates Motel.
I thought you were in your garage fixing your motorcycle.
No, I had just gotten back.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah, so I had just dropped my girlfriend off at her house, and I was driving back home, and I get this tweet. And by the way, I'm at a red light, and I feel guilty about it, right? Because I did go look at my phone. I'm like, okay, whatever. My car's not moving. I'll just look at this. And it's like the only time I've done that with Twitter. I've done it with other stuff. It's the only time I've actually looked at a mention that arrived when I was at a stoplight. And it was someone, I'm sorry, I can't remember, but he's called out in the post, who's like, hey, you need to look at this. I'm like, what? And the title of this video is like All New HTC One leak or whatever. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's somebody it's just dumb or whatever. So I click on it, and the video starts playing, and then the light changes, and then, of course, I can't watch it. So I go a quarter mile down the road, I pull over, I watch this thing, and holy crap, legit, this 14-year-old has the all new HTC One.
Yeah, so you were just listening to this, right? Did you just listen to some parts of it?
Yeah, so I looked at it to confirm that it was the all new HTC One. Like, I pulled over, I looked at it, I'm like, oh wow, there's the all new HTC One. Holy crap, this is for real. And then I had to get going, so I was like, I'm gonna let the video play and listen to it as I drive. And that's when I'm like, and then I'm listening to this kid, and I'm like, oh man, this guy. But you know, as someone on Twitter mentioned today, hey, he scooped a lot of people. So
yeah, but at what cost?
He also scooped one Jeff Gordon.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen the video, it's a 12-minute like hands-on physical tour of the all new HTC One, a prototype model, which the kid informs us was filmed on February 19th. So I don't know what took it so long to go up or what took it so long for everybody to notice. But it ultimately is like the most in-depth look we've had at this thing. And the kid informs us he doesn't know why the software might be protected, but he gets these things early because, you know, he's sponsored. It's just, I mean, the video is just bathed in this kind of these half-hearted lies to try and do something about protecting himself. But he did not have the foresight to actually cover up the IMEIs.
Well, it's even worse than that, because if you watch it, I wasn't even paying attention. This was before everything kind of hit the fan.
Okay.
He pulls down the notification shade and flips over to the settings page, and it shows his name and face.
You're kidding? You're kidding me? Really?
No, it says his full name. It says Roshan, I can't say his last name. I don't remember, Jamkatel or something like that.
Yes, that's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, so it shows that, and at the beginning of the video, he said, "Hey guys, it's Roshan." So,
well, no, I think he used a different name for that, didn't he?
No,
I think he
at the beginning of the video, it says that, but that's what his Twitter handle is. Yep. That's his YouTube channel. That's everything.
Yep.
Now I did some digging though. After it
so
all,
did I. Did you? Yeah. Go ahead.
So apparently, this kid's father worked for either a carrier or HTC. I think it was US Cellular.
Well, that was the speculation, yeah.
Yeah, see, I had heard that initially both parents were supposed to, but then people found out they didn't. Someone was working for Google, maybe?
Well, there's also a testing firm in that part of the country that he might have worked for. An entirely separate company.
The reason I heard US Cellular is because it was one of the deleted tweets from Jeff Gordon. He said
Jeff Gordon, listeners, is a HTC
head of communications.
Executive, yes.
Yeah. So he tweeted this kid and said, "You're going to have a very rough week," or something.
It is not going to be a good week for you, friend. Yeah.
And one of the tweets
thinly veiled threats. It's great.
Yeah. One of the tweets that followed was, "Does one of your parents happen to work at US Cellular?"
Yeah, and this was not just like Jeff, you know, trolling the kid and then like the kid not responding. Like they had an extended conversation, and we have to give kudos to Unleash the Phones, who were prudent enough to screen cap this exchange before it was taken down. So it is linked in the story that's linked in the description. The Unleash the Phone story is linked with the screenshots. You should check them out. It's a hell of a conversation. Yeah, it's like, nope, my parents don't work at USO. They both are engineers. Why? And Jeff's like, well, just curious. Well, we have the IMEIs, so we're in the process of tracking who it belongs to and their employer. So very rapidly, this turned from a kind of a fun, for me at least, this turned from kind of a fun thing where it's like, haha, this video sucks, but wow, good for you, kid, to like, damn, you are not only going to be grounded, but you probably are going to get like your parents or your fun uncle fired or whoever belongs to this phone.
Yeah, but the interesting thing was that after it went viral, I guess is the correct term to use, he tried to back out of it.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he said that it was a fake phone and that it wasn't
real. It's not the real phone. It's not the real phone. Like, the increasingly desperate lies. I felt so bad to watch it. It's just like it was designed to the pictures but stocked with the ROM. The site said it wasn't the real thing, but it was close. Like it, you know, he's telling those lies that you tell when you're 14 and you've suddenly realized that you've really screwed up.
There, yeah.
Yeah, you're no longer lying about like whether you brush your teeth or not. Like you're about to get your parents or your relative or whoever in really big trouble.
You broke. Yeah, you broke your mom's vase, and
right.
You're gonna blame it on the dog running, and something crazy like that. But there was another thing where he said that the reason he recorded it on the 19th, and that he had uploaded it and not pushed it live, or that it was on his computer or something, and that someone else had uploaded it. So yeah, there's a lot of really weird stuff that goes on here. But if you follow the Twitter conversation, he has a Twitter conversation with @theGoogleFanboy, who basically has it out for this guy, or at least he looks like he does, because he said, "Yeah, I took the video and posted it, and what's done is done." Like, he had some part in this. I don't know what. It's hard to tell. But the Google Fanboy definitely had some part in it. I don't know if he just downloaded and re-uploaded the video or what, but yeah, there's something going on there. I don't know if it was actually his doing entirely.
It looks like the kid might have gotten $60 worth of pizza delivered to his house too. Like it looked like, I'm reading this kind of is at anyway. So it looks, so that sucks. Like, I mean, you know, it's funny, but it's also like, wow, man, when you make a mistake on the internet, you make it big. Like, there's no middle ground. I understand that there's a limit to the sympathy we should have, but at the same time, I can't help but feel bad for the kid because he obviously didn't know what he was getting into.
Yeah, but all the unwanted consequences aside, this is really interesting news and not the sort of stuff we always see with an unreleased phone.
Right.
Oh yeah.
This is the level of the guy finding the iPhone in the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, better. I mean, was that one even running? I thought because Apple locked him out of it, didn't they?
I mean, it turned on, but that was about it.
Yeah, but we got to see the hardware. Like, that was the first time we got to see the hardware, and the progression was like, is this the new Apple iPhone? And then like 2 hours later, this is the new Apple iPhone. And so that was pretty cool. But yeah, you're right. This is 12-minute video. Like, for all the crazy, like the really annoying continuous blasting of Soulja Boy to test the boom sound speakers, and for all the kind of BS in the video, like it was, like it was a really, really cool close-up look at this phone that we hadn't seen, on video before. So we owe him thanks for that. What did we learn? What else did we learn from this? Besides its kind of look and its
micro SD card.
Yeah. Well, and that was rumored, but that was confirmed, right? We saw the new Blink feed to a degree.
Beats audio?
Yep, which we knew about, yeah. So we may not have gotten too much hard info from this. I'll be honest, I did not rewatch the 12-minute video before I came on the air, but
I'd say it confirmed a lot of things.
It did.
Did we get to see the camera?
Well, he showed it. He showed the viewfinder.
In action. Did we get...
Yeah, he took a couple pictures, but I mean, a couple pictures on a shaky video shot over his bed. He took pictures of his sheets. So
yeah,
it's not a lot. There's not a lot to take away from it, but I don't know. He basically said he didn't know what the second camera was for, so it wasn't very helpful. He didn't give a lot of specs or anything. It was just kind of, this is what it does. This is what it looks like.
It's true, but if you've got the hottest device ever, like, we're going to talk a little more about this with Evan, so I do want to move on. But that's, when you've got the hottest device of the year, now that the S5 has actually been announced, it's like, okay, well, sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you could just put it on camera, walking around, and it doesn't matter what language you're speaking in, it's still a pretty valuable leak. So
it could be 12 minutes of look what I have and you don't, and we'd still be pretty captivated.
Exactly right. Exactly. So check out that video if you haven't already, where the leaks are still coming in, as we will talk about later on. But let's talk about what effect the existing one and maybe the new desires have had on the company's bottom line. Stephen, can you give us
not enough of an effect?
Yeah.
Well, we've been following HTC's reports about its revenue for probably the past, going back to last summer is where we really started getting a sense that, things had been bad for a while now, but we started hitting the first quarters where instead of showing meager profits, the company was actually showing a loss, and our concerns started going from, well, HTC needs to, shape up to, is this going to be the next BlackBerry? And the latest report looking at these Q1, it's not financial year Q1, but the figures for the start of 2014 are not looking good. It's down from the previous quarter. It's down from the same time in 2013. And yeah, we're used to early year kind of being slumped for smartphones in general, but HTC cannot afford more slumps. And unless this, the new desires or the all new one end up really revitalizing things, HTC is not in good shape for the rest of the year.
I'm looking forward to getting some more perspective from our friend Nick Gray on this, because we had an interesting conversation, Stephen, a couple weeks ago when Nick Gray from HTC Source came on, and we kind of talked about this point of like, here's the billions of dollars that HTC has in the bank. Here's what's liquid of that. their financials are healthy enough to allow them to bleed money for a while. But I agree with you. It seems like that I can't remember the last time we reported a positive financial news story in HTC that didn't involve profits from them selling off their stake in, Beats.
Yeah.
So I just wonder how much longer this can happen. But more interestingly, I wonder if the HTC One in its all new incarnation is going to be the thing that drags them out of the soup. Do you guys think that?
I don't know.
I can't wrap my head around it because, the original one is something that we all really liked. A lot of people liked it.
It was one of the best reviewed phones probably of all time.
Yeah, it's gotten so many awards. So many awards. And the company is still just hemorrhaging money. Mm-hmm. So I can't really figure it out. And I'm surprised you didn't link to my editorial from yesterday since you helped me write the headline. Jerk.
That was great. Yeah. That was I was saving, because I had to make a thin rundown, I was saving the editorials for the Pocketnow Roundup on tomorrow.
Well, that ties in, I think, really well here. And I think that part of what HTC is missing is that middle ground where people don't necessarily need a super high-end phone for super premium prices, and they don't want all the bottom-of-the-bucket phones that HTC makes. That they're focusing on emerging markets, but I don't think they're really getting the penetration that they need or want in those markets. But if you take the Moto X and the Moto G, for example, the Moto G is that low end, but it's also very, very cheap. Mm-hmm. All of HTC's low-end smartphones are still like twice, if not 3 times the price of the Moto G. They're very, not 3, maybe twice the price of the Moto G.
Right.
And then the Moto X, it's up there in terms of being a flagship and having really nice specs and user experience, but it's $400 off contract, and that's $200 less than HTC's flagship, Samsung's flagship. So I was saying, flagship. I love flagships. But all I'm saying is, the Moto X. Actually, after I wrote that editorial, Jeff reached out to me on Twitter and he said, "Yeah, but the Moto X didn't sell that well, did it?" And I don't think that's the point. I think it's kind of letting the world know that you're not about the spec race and all of that you're focusing on user experience.
But I don't know if HTC needs to send that message any more strongly, because they have historically kind of not been a gimmick pusher. They've been like, hey, these speakers sound really cool. Hey, this camera does really awesome in low light. Hey, this thing's made of aluminum. It generally pushes those pillars.
But the disconnect there is the price. That's the only thing. That's the last factor. So this was actually Steven's idea. The editorial was Steven's idea.
Nice.
So creating a kind of like a Desire-esque HTC One, so made of plastic, and cutting the price, passing those cost savings on to the user.
We do have a new Desire.
It seems like a no-brainer. Yeah.
Well, we do have a new Desire, but apparently it's priced way too high, and it's like they've split up the blink feed experience. As a matter of fact, I just sent HTC's official statement on this to Steven. What is it? It says, tabs in Gmail are tough to work. There will always be a core HTC Sense experience, but our pace of innovation is so fast that we wanted to find a way for more of our customers to enjoy some of the latest HTC Sense experiences. Given the realities of optimizing the full HTC Sense platform for new phones with different hardware specs, we decided it was more important to bring some key features to these devices. So that's why HTC has split out the blink feed and the video experience and just bundled them onto the Desire 310 instead of the full Sense skin, which I suspect the 310 can't run.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But why couldn't they do something like that? The Desire lineup is something that is world-renowned as a great line of phones. It always has been.
Is it?
I mean, the original Desire was, I would say, at least from my experience, as popular as the Nexus One.
Do people go around saying, like, oh my God, I want the new Desire? Like, does that happen in parts of the world?
Well, they're not really promoted in the States that much to begin with.
Yeah, not recently either. But I'm saying, like, the original Desire lineup, huge. It was huge.
Huh.
So why not just bank on that?
I don't know. I don't... we've seen statements from HTC that say that they're going to focus more on the mid-range because they have to, and I guess the Desire line is what they're using to do that. But I think the opinion out there is predominantly that this is the 310 and the 610 or the 6 whatever are not the way to go about that.
I think it's ironic. If we look back a couple years, we used to be really harsh on HTC for having all these indistinguishable kind of rubbish phones, and now we kind of pared down its lineup. It has just very few flagship models. There's still a bunch of desires, but I think there's less than we had in years past, and it's clear what the differences are between them. And in spite of doing pretty much what we told HTC to do, it's just not getting the sales that should follow.
I, too, have been surprised by that. I really thought that focusing on the One would do it, would really, focus the company and bring it to financial success in addition to perception success, I suppose.
Yeah. And looking back on the figures from last year, it seemed like the first one saw a really nice initial rush of sales, but they died off very quickly. And I think by June even, we were seeing it decline back to the sort of sales it was seeing in the first quarter of the year. It's that HTC can't take this introduction of its flagship phone and keep people excited about it all year round. And then it comes out with the One Mini and the One Max. It ended up distracting us rather than really, building upon the allure of the One.
That's true. The Mini and the Max definitely did not help matters. But I think the more pressing, the more pressing challenge was the launch of the Galaxy S4, which of course was right on the heels of the One and drank their milkshake and so on. So now that what is the launch schedule like this year?
The Galaxy S4 is going to hit April 16th.
S5 is going to hit April 16th.
Yeah, S5. April 15th or April 16th. And this will be, the all new HTC One will be announced on the 25th.
And we don't know about availability yet?
No. But what I was saying, I think I said it last week, was if HTC stays to the 1 year date, it will launch the HTC One, the all new HTC One, within a few weeks of its announcement, because it was announced last year on April 19th.
So effectively, we're talking about... Yeah, it did. And so effectively, though, we're talking about the same date, right? We're talking about within a couple of weeks, we're talking about these phones launching at the same time.
Hopefully.
And
I don't know.
What's different this year is that the S4, for all the backlash the S4 deserved last year, I don't think it got it. But I think this year the S5 is getting backlash. And whether that's deserved or not is debatable. Certainly we've had that debate a lot, and I don't really care about that anymore. But do you think that backlash, which I think exists, will hurt Samsung enough for HTC to come in and be the phone that everyone wanted to be excited about?
I think it'll give it some margin to improve and do better in sales than it did last year. But I really don't think people are that upset. I think it's a vocal minority that are upset with the Galaxy S5, and I'm part of that.
I think you're right.
Samsung could have done, I think, almost anything with the S5 launch. It could have delivered, a brick with a picture of a phone drawn on it in chalk, and it would still outsell the new HTC One.
Yeah.
Or a Band-Aid with a display on the front.
Yes.
Well, we'll have to see how it all shakes out, but let's not dwell on that. We will have plenty of HTC talk in the weeks to come. We have just secured our RSVP for the March event. Actually, it was a couple weeks ago. So it's good. We're going to have plenty of time to check all that out.
All I'm saying is HTC, make a Moto X or a Moto X-like device.
All I'm saying is...
Do it. Make it happen.
I think Samsung needed to change a lot with the Galaxy S4, and they did for the S5, and that's why I like the S5. But Samsung is going to push it with all of the marketing prowess that we have come to know them for. And like I say, I feel like every week, maybe if HTC could do more in the marketing department, that would be better.
Yeah.
And not in the vein of Hipster Troll Car Wash, which is very funny for us to talk about, but I don't think it sells any phones.
If they stuck with that, I think it could have worked, though. It was a one note. If they had one coming out every couple months or so, I mean, it'd be prohibitively expensive with big Hollywood stars, but...
Yeah, but he's already signed, he's already on board, and they are going to, I think, roll out more of those just tweaked. So we'll see. And eventually, speaking of Jeff Gordon, I would like to get him on the show to talk about some of these things, and he's indicated his willingness to do so. So I think we'll have him on maybe near the Anho launch. We'll see. I'm going to call it. I'm going to go. Hashtag Anho. Yeah. Anyway, we already mentioned this before, but Verizon has introduced the LTE-powered Note Pro 12.2. Let's not talk any more about it because we're not going to get the model name right ever. But they've kicked that out, so go buy one if that's what you are into. It's not the last Verizon phone we're going to talk about, but it is for this moment. Because we have to talk about this bizarro ad.
Oh, my God.
All right. Steven, do you want to take us through what actually happens in this commercial? Because I love your headline. It's great.
It starts
I'm going to go cringe in this corner.
Enough. we have a couple of friends getting together at a restaurant for birthday dinner, and one of them presents the other with this LG G Flex. Cool phone, great gift.
Awesome. You can't forget the guy with the guitar in the beginning. That guy's awkward, too.
I might have forgotten.
I forgot about the guitar guy at the beginning.
He's singing Happy Birthday, right. The
mariachi singer. Yes.
Yeah.
But one of the friends is not present at this birthday celebration. We can see his photograph there, but it turns out he contributed to the gift of the G Flex. And as our birthday boy takes the phone out, so all of a sudden, instead of holding the phone, we see he gets a mouth in his wrist, sort of, and an ear in his fingers, and proceeds to take a phone call, not holding the G Flex.
Don't forget to note that the mouth is covered in
I didn't realize that until I saw Taylor's
grossest beard ever. It is so nasty.
It makes me think of I think it's Aaron Danger in Jackass when they prank him and put all their on his mouth.
Oh my God! Yes.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you for. See, that's what I was trying to avoid. So now I'll edit it out. Thank you very much. Frickin' jerkbag. All right. So Stephen, go ahead.
And we also, I was going to say, Taylor pointed out, and I hadn't realized this, that as the man holds this sort of anthropomorphized face, hand, phone to his ear to take the call, he's holding the ear part to his ear and the mouth part to his mouth.
Oh, God, it's true.
No sense.
Makes no sense at all.
Yeah, and it kind of just goes down the rails, or off the rails from there. As you mentioned, it ends up... somehow someone thought demonstrating the self-healing plastic would make a good analogy to scratching his hand, drawing blood, because plastic is just like skin.
It's like a big old crab claw too.
It's ridiculous.
Oh my God. And it's like a 2-minute spot, so it just keeps going on. And then what happens, guys? The logo shows, and that's when I left too. So what happens after the logo goes away?
Well, we have a new, instead of the bearded hand, now we have a lady hand that comes from somewhere, and our protagonist ends up making out with his own hand and sort of
Dear God. Are you serious?
Well, the face, the lady face hand thing says, "Is that garlic?" Because he's like speaking to it really closely, and she's like, "I love garlic," and then they proceed to he climbs into the sink. I don't even know how to explain this in a PG state. It's just so awkward.
The only way that it possibly makes sense to me is this was published by LG Benelux, so maybe it's this European sense of humor that I just don't get.
Yeah, so somebody called him out on Twitter, somebody named Blue Wall, was like, how high were you when you made this, LG UK? And LG UK was good enough to respond and said, this actually came from our friends in Holland. And
could explain a bit.
The reply to that in our comment thread is, as someone from Holland, I think this is indeed a fair explanation. And someone else says, even for Holland, that ad is all kinds of disturbing. I really, really don't want a G Flex now. Oh God! Where do 2-minute ads like this run in Holland? I
was wondering that. Was it like internet only or what?
Yeah, or is it one of those ads that shows in like the pre-roll, like before the trailers at movie theaters? Mm. Except it's in English, so I kind of doubt that. It's
so much wrong with it.
Awful.
I mean, hey, are we talking about the G Flex or not? Mission accomplished.
Yeah, we are, but I don't know that anyone who's watched that commercial would even stay on it. If they have the capability of changing the channel, 10 seconds in, the minute that mouth covered in that forest of really disturbing hair that doesn't look like facial hair started talking with crab. Yeah. I would leave the room. I think if I couldn't change the channel, I would leave, and I don't care what it would be for.
That's only if you make it to the end of the first part, though. After you get through that little splash screen, and then it goes to him talking to the girl, that's even worse. I felt so uncomfortable. I was watching that in a coffee shop earlier this morning, and I felt so uncomfortable.
Ugh. Well, let's talk about some of the good things that LG is doing, not HTC. The G3 apparently is. Do we have some confirmation that it's coming in June?
Confirmation?
No, we don't. No, we don't. We don't.
Really like to believe so.
Yeah, you would like. Whoa, hey! I haven't seen this leaked image with the big old speaker grill below the screen.
That is possibly one of the worst Photoshops ever.
That's a horrible photo.
Yeah.
I was just looking at it and I'm like, wow, that's sideways. Somebody photoshopped this on the train.
Yeah,
dash of HTC One thrown in there.
Yeah.
The LG logo, or like the little blank space at the top, like extends past the bezel.
Yeah, it does.
The square around the camera module, which is sideways now.
Oh god,
you can see the different colors.
Why are the buttons sideways? This is awful. Okay, that's a horrible render.
I like the sideways buttons.
I do not like the sideways button. But it was we have rumors about June, right? So that's kind of the news on the G3, but it is relevant because, of course, what are we talking about already, Stephen?
I don't know where you're going here.
You know where I'm going.
Oh, the Nexus 6?
Yes, because of course we're already talking about the Nexus 6. Because why wouldn't we be talking about this?
Is LG going to make it for a third year in a row? I find that hard to believe.
I don't. I mean,
just
back in the old school,
speaking?
yeah, like back in the old days, I would have been surprised, but now I'm not. You know.
Well, HTC made one. Samsung made two. LG's going to make three. I mean, if you're looking at
1, 2, 3, brother, it's numeric.
Mm-hmm.
It's numeric. I don't know if that's correct.
Sure is.
But yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see someone else take a stab, like Oppo.
Let's talk about that. What are the rumors behind the Nexus 6, Stephen?
Well, they've been saying it's going to be a lightweight, quote unquote, version of the G3, which itself we don't know that much about. And actually, I ran that. The report was in German, the initial one. I read it through a couple of different translators. Didn't always get lightweight. I got like downgraded, or different variations on the phrase. But in some way, a little, less powerful, or in some way less substantial than the full G3, which isn't a huge departure from what we've gotten in the past with the Nexus 5 and Nexus 4. So I don't know that that's really a substantial rumor. I mean, kind of just. What we were all assuming anyway. Yeah,
I kind of don't think it. I thought it was worth touching on, mainly so that I could complain that we're already talking about the Nexus 6. And I would like everyone to calm down.
Do we think it's going to be called that?
No, it can't be. They have to reinvent the naming scheme
at some point. We're going to have the phones collide with the tablets.
Right. It's going to be a giant mess. No, we can't do that. It has to be called it'll be the Nexus Neo or something like that. If Samsung hadn't already polluted the Neo by making a cool term stand for a really non-cool sub-brand. Everything that Samsung has called Neo has not been good. And I really hope
Neo was interesting.
No, it wasn't. How? In what way was that interesting?
Hexacore processor.
Nobody cares.
Interesting from an academic smartphone reporting standpoint.
Okay. Not actually. Not genuinely interesting.
Right? No.
Right. No. Well, these are good points. I'm glad that we mentioned Neo and Samsung and the Note, because we have an editor on the staff arguing that Samsung may have become the new Apple. Has it, Taylor Martin?
Giggity.
Fun fact: you are not the first Pocketnow editor to make this point. Do you know who the first was?
I'm gonna guess Jaime. I don't know.
No, it's a good guess. But the first Pocketnow team member to make this argument in an editorial was back in 2011, I believe, and it was Evan Blass.
Hey,
interesting.
Isn't that exciting?
Hey.
Yeah, the iPhoneification of the Galaxy is what the title was. It was really cool.
And hence the lawsuit.
Boom. So Taylor, modernize us. Tell us all about how this your views on this matter. Is Samsung indeed becoming the new Apple?
In a way. So if you don't make it down to the really, really awful comment section on this piece, and you read what I wrote in context, it should all pretty much make sense.
What did you write?
Basically, Samsung, and I think we explained this last week on the podcast, but Samsung used to kind of push the market and drive the spec race, which in a way was a good thing. It doesn't necessarily mean great things for the end user at each generation, but it drives competition, and it created... If Samsung were not so heavy in the spec race or so adamant about the spec race, where would we be today? Would we have 1080p displays, or would we still be using QHD? Samsung is one of the main reasons that we've gotten so far so fast, because they pushed the envelope and raised the bar every time. That was until last year, when the Galaxy S4. Now, they improved some things, but a lot of people were, and Jaime, Anton were agreeing last week that they really didn't do as much last year as they had been in the past. And this year is just an extension of that. The hardware hasn't changed a whole lot. It looks the same, minus the backside. Axel! My dog is swinging a rope.
Okay, all right.
And
obviously a Samsung fan in the K9
yes,
portion.
he's angry. I made him mad. Yeah. But yeah, they've kind of taken a backseat approach here and hold on.
I love this. I like this. This is happening while I was about to interrupt Taylor to be like, "We have to speed up. We have to go." And now we have dog maintenance.
Yes. Well, I'm back.
All right. Good.
And basically, they're doing just enough. That's what I said throughout the article, is that they're doing just enough to get by and push them into the next year, rather than, going above and beyond and kind of pushing the industry. Which
is historically Apple's signature.
Exactly, yes.
Especially with the S devices, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not not bashing Samsung.
No,
I'm not bashing Apple.
You have to read the piece, I know. But
everybody took it as,
okay.
You're saying Samsung sucks.
And that's the way it always happens. That's not interesting to talk about anymore. So we don't really care about that. Like, let that conversation happen in the comments. It's important, but it's not what I want to talk about. I just brought it up here. I put it in here, and I think it's important because it hit me the same way. But when I was at the Unpacked event, even though it struck me very much like an Apple event, I didn't consider it a bad thing.
No, not at all.
So I don't think it has to be a bad thing. It's like anyone outside the very small corner of the tech space that we are in would look at someone criticizing one company turning into Apple as craziness. Right, because they are the model of success that a lot of common folks identify with. But so I don't think it has to be pejorative. Is my point.
It doesn't, but I think
it could be because I'm sorry. It'll offend the people who really, really valued the early Galaxy devices as those geeky alternatives to the iPhone, because that's how it was positioned, right? It's like even back in 2010, okay, the iPhone, okay, everybody has it, everybody's excited about it, great. But look at this phone; it's got a bigger screen, it's got a faster processor. Look at the spec sheet. Like the Galaxy S was the phone to get if you were a phone geek, or if you wanted a stunningly awesome smartphone on a carrier that wasn't AT&T.
Right, and now it's turning into this device that's, a blanket device that's pretty good at everything, but not necessarily the best at anything. Mm-hmm. And that's where the iPhone has sat for 6 years now, or 5 years. It's great at everything it does, but it's not necessarily the best at one thing. And that's not a bad thing. That means it's going to sell like hotcakes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best phone on the market for someone who wants, excessive devices, that you can run computer games. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I do.
Something that's just over the top and more than anybody would ever need. Samsung's not moving in that direction anymore.
Do you think this is a consequence of the way the Android's been maturing over the years? Because back in the day, the draw of iOS was the software. It was, the operating system was incredibly smooth. It had the apps. It had everything you wanted. So all Samsung could really offer, not being able to deliver iOS, is this really impressive hardware. But now that Android is a lot more competitive on the same level with iOS, it doesn't necessarily have to wow in that same way.
Yeah, I do think it's part of that. But the point that I kind of touched on at the end is that this is, I think, a good thing, because Samsung has been so far ahead of all of the other Android OEMs. Just leaps and bounds further. They're pulling in profits when everybody else is just grasping at straws. And I think this opens up the door for HTC, ZTE, Oppo, and all these other Android manufacturers who are trying to make up ground to truly just kind of captivate the market and innovate crazy new features like Nokia. Their PureView, by far one of my favorite things to have come from Nokia or the mobile industry, period. And it's opening up the door for features like that to be innovated and maybe grow companies and pull them out of this red zone.
I like you. The minute Samsung thinks just enough is when we can hope for another OEM to capitalize on the opportunity and turn the market on its head. So I'm looking forward to that too. I think that's going to be fun. You should read that editorial, folks. It is full of great points. Evan Blass has just informed me that our waiting area is very nice. Our waiting area for the podcast. So I've asked him to try the M&Ms and sit in our fine leather couch. So we have a few more minutes to cover the news, but the point is we do have to move on from Android. Thank you for your points, both of you gentlemen. Let's move on to Windows Phone. Hey, Steven.
Right.
Hey, Steven.
Yes,
what's the deal with this dual booting phone? I know you didn't write this news story, but LOL, right?
Yeah, it's happening.
Who's making this thing?
Well, we got these announcements back at MWC. We didn't see new Windows Phone hardware, but we heard from Microsoft about all these new OEMs. Well, some new and some old who kind of fell asleep at the wheel for Windows Phone 8 are going to be coming back. And one of them, at least, these guys, Carbon out of India, are getting set up to make full-on dual-booty Windows Phone 8.1 / Android phones. We don't know if any other OEMs are going to be doing the same thing. Presumably, if Carbon could get the thumbs up from Microsoft, there's no reason anyone else couldn't. So this is happening.
So it would be hypocritical of me to go from saying, hey, I think someone should come in and turn the market on its head, cool idea, Taylor, to immediately stomp on the very next story, which is, hey, somebody's trying to turn the model on its head. I just don't think this is the way to do it.
I am writing an editorial about this right this minute, actually.
Really?
This is what I stopped to do, or stopped doing.
Could you at least concentrate on the podcast while we're recording it? I mean,
come on, jerk. I love this render that is the headline image of this piece, though. Windows Phone 8 on an HTC One. That just still makes me salivate out of control.
Yeah, so the headline that I think I'm rolling with right now is the beauty of choice Windows Phone on Android hardware.
That's nice.
And I'm going to make some points through this editorial, but it's not all great. There are downsides to it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a step in the right direction.
I don't know. I just don't see a mass audience. I don't see a demand. Didn't you say this last week? I don't really see a demand for that people are gathering by the hundreds of thousands to be we need more than one OS on our phones.
No, I totally
see
agree.
It being if you're choosing between this and another phone, this one runs one OS, or this one gives me a choice. I mean, everything else being equal, I might go with the choice, but like I said, I don't think it's going to necessarily draw people to the phone just because of this dual mode.
Right. No, but I think it's not going to be a huge thing up front. But I think for Microsoft in the future, it's a way for people to test out Windows Phone without having to buy into it. Mm-hmm. And I think that, at the very least, is something that has value in the future, not necessarily right now. But if they can find a way to be hey, your Android phone can run Windows Phone, just reboot it and select this option and try out Windows Phone. If you don't like it, go back. Mm-hmm. So I'll make these points in the editorial. We don't need to harp on it too much right now.
Please do. I look forward to reading that because this is a fascinating thing that I would really like to get some hands-on time with. Because I'm with Steven. I might get one of these. I might like to enjoy one of these if indeed it is consumer level dual bootery. If it's carrier level or manufacturer level, okay, buy this device by the 100,000 and you can pick what OS goes on it. Then I don't care.
No.
Yeah. Cortana gets featured in a video hands-on. I will admit I haven't seen this thing yet. So Steven, tell us what happened here. Cortana is Windows Phone's new voice assistant for Windows Phone 8.1, which I am stoked about because I'm playing Halo 4 and Cortana's awesome because I'm a nerd.
Didn't Halo 4 come out 3 years ago?
Yes, I am behind. Okay. Shut up.
Okay.
I bought that and gave it to my brother-in-law. So that's how much I don't like Halo. So I'm not really. I don't like the branding.
Why are we friends?
We're not.
Steven.
Right. So we've been seeing pictures of Cortana. I think going back to September, October of last year, just really early leaks. But with this SDK leak that happened a month ago by now, there's been a lot of new stuff coming out. We've seen icons that have hinted at some of its features. We haven't really gotten a nice up-close look at the software in action. So this video sort of gives us that. It shows how you launch it. It can be launched either from a live tile or directly from the search button. Mm-hmm. showed some of the configuration stages of it, but we didn't get to actually see it in action, see it responding to any questions. We didn't get to hear it, which I know is what everyone's wanting to hear, that Cortana voice talking to you. But it's still cool. We got to see where it gets some of the information it uses to learn about you, like how it does its Google Now features. It's going to be something that Microsoft calls the notebook, where it gathers information about your life from various sources, email, social networks, that sort of thing.
That's my primary pain point with this. I not that I don't want my information collected. I think we're in an era where that's kind of unavoidable if you want the latest and greatest. And, of course, I value the latest and greatest over my privacy, obviously, which is frickin' sad, but I guess it's true. But the point is, Google Now is impressive. It's a great product, and so is touchless control in the Moto X, which ties into Google Now because of the vast trove of information Google has about you. With this, doesn't it seem like Microsoft is maybe starting from scratch? Like they have not been able to acquire this information unless you've had a Microsoft account for a long time. And even then, unless you're all in the Microsoft ecosystem, I'm sure their information on you pales in comparison to Google's. And relative to Google's users.
Well, yeah, but it's still the exact same thing that Google's doing, just because Google's been more successful with its decade-long pursuit of all our personal data. It has a head start.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. And that seems to be the Windows Phone story time after time. Like Windows Phone had this wonderful big win in 2010 with this UI that pretty much everyone said was amazing. Whether you liked it or not, you still admitted it was incredible. But it seems like since then it's been catch-up time. And that's been very frustrating as a Windows Phone user. First on 7, then on 8, personally, to be like, wow, guys, I'm so glad we're finally getting this thing on my platform that other platforms have had for literally years. And I just want them to bring something else compelling. Taylor, didn't you tweet something about that or say something on Google Plus where you're like, I want them to bring something more?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
so ready to explain.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
Yep. Moving on. No, okay. I was just saying that it's basically doing what Google Now has done, maybe to a different degree or the different approach, but it's nothing. They're basically it's a catch-up move.
Yeah.
And rather than them saying, "Hey, how can we make this better? How can we do it differently?" They're just like, "Oh, let's catch up, and then we'll worry." Yeah. It's a Me Too beat. Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of the catch-up impulse, this seems to happen on a lot of shows, but we're going to blast through our last two categories in 10 minutes. How's that sound to you, gentlemen?
Good.
Doable.
Don't forget about the Icon review.
I know. Yeah. So Taylor released a Lumia Icon review last week in the midst of the MWC news dump, which assured it was immediately buried.
Yes.
But it was a great review. It was laid out beautifully, and Taylor's conclusion that it is the best Windows Phone ever, essentially, made me laugh out loud. Because I was like, Taylor, I could not agree with you less. This thing does not look all that impressive. Send it to me at once. So then he did. He sent it to me, not at once. He forgot to send it to me first. And then he sent it to me. And then I got it. And then I used it. And then I was like, oh no, you right. This thing rocks.
It does.
And it rocks so much harder than the 928 did. It looks like a bigger 928, and it's really not. It's a different class of product. It is the greatest middle ground I have seen on a Windows Phone. It combines the best elements of all with very few sacrifices. And I wrote about all that in the Lumia Icon review rebuttal. Go read that. And
we
agree or disagree.
Agreed on something.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Nokia learning, folks. Nokia learning.
Hey, learning. And it's doubly surprising because this is not a phone on a traditionally Windows Phone friendly carrier. It's on Verizon, who screws things up a lot of the time. But no, we have Qi wireless charging, unmolested. We have not a giant Verizon logo. It's heinously out of place, but it's still small and up in the corner. And they really didn't screw it up too bad. And you have DataSense, which is still a Verizon exclusive in the States, I believe. So
yeah, it's a good phone, and it's something. I know you say this, that if I buy it, you're expecting an editorial, but I'm thinking about getting this phone because it's just. I love cameras. I love cameras.
You have ruined me on the 1020, by the way. Like a couple weeks ago, listeners, you remember that Taylor was like, "Oh man, I don't like the 1020. I like it a lot, but I can't deal with the Oreo." And, the big old casing thing on the back. And I'm like, whatever, man, it's fine. Now, every time I pick up the 1020, I'm like, man, this is awkward. This is awkward to hold.
It really is. Like, I got used to it when I used the phone, but now going back to it and
exactly. Like, when you don't use it for a long stretch, then you go back to it. It's like, man, this thing is wonky.
When I'm sitting at a desk, the way I use my phone is it sits on the desk and I scroll through things, and you can't do that with the 1020 because it just spins around.
Yeah. Well,
so annoying.
Thankfully, and I did go back to my review because I was like, man, I was so taken with the thing. Did I like gloss over that in my review just because I love the camera so much? No, I did mention in the review that it's cumbersome. So
yeah, so I would rather take a lower resolution camera with a slightly less effective lossless digital zoom or post reframing that fits in my pocket and fits in my hand and lays on a table flat. You know, I would. That's infinitely more useful to me.
My Pebble just blasted out 18 notifications in a row on my wrist, and all the notifications were the same. I don't know what just happened. But
is it connected to an iPhone?
No, it's the Moto X. But yeah, yeah, Pebble Steel review. You did that. Hey, before we get there, let's talk about iOS.
What's that?
Very, very short. Very, very quick news in iOS land. The iPhone 5C is
disappointing.
It's big old sad face.
Yeah, it continues to be disappointing.
So what's the story on that? I don't understand. Why don't people like... guys, I'm not lying. I see a lot of these things in Boston. Boston's kind of an iPhone town, but you would expect the 5S to be kind of hanging around.
Yeah.
No, man. That 5C is everywhere I look.
I see them all over the place too,
and
it looks like to me I always think it's like an iPhone 5 with a really thin like featherweight case on it. I always do every single time.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen one in the flesh, at least not with a distinctive official spotted case or anything. But that would catch my eye. But
yeah, I haven't seen the Crocs case much. People don't go for that. They just like strut around naked with them, or no.
And I think it.
You know what I mean?
I think it's because we expected a cheap iPhone, and it's not cheap.
That is true.
No,
it's slightly reduced price.
What is the actual news here? As it turns out, new supply chain sources have told Digitimes that Apple's currently holding on to as many as 3 million iPhone 5C units in inventory that it can't sell.
Fire sale? What?
We've been hearing since last fall that they have more of these than they can push.
Yeah.
It's just they have a lot of them sitting around.
Yeah.
And if you look in the comments, it's lower the price, make them cheap, lower the price.
Yeah, I want to direct all commenters who always complain that Jaime Rivera is biased to this piece, which is a sad news story about Apple by Jaime Rivera. Anyway, iPhone 5C, well, I don't see... I think we've heard rumors already that the 5C is not going to make it to the next generation of iPhone products. I think this is kind of going to be a one-off for them.
Yeah, it's been mentioned.
Yeah, and, I wouldn't be surprised. I still like mine. I'm looking at mine right now. But my cousin actually works at Apple, and during a recent trip to Boston, my father took a photo of me in the sound booth. He's like, wow, you working here? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, let me take a picture. I'm like, okay. And then he sent it to my family. And, of course, my cousin sees the photo. She's like, haha, nice to see that iPhone 5C in the background. Wish Mike was actually using it. But I think he's made it pretty clear he's not an iPhone guy. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not. It was funny.
My roommate just got hired at Apple, and I was joking with him.
What, at retail?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
I live like half a mile from here, but
that is also cool.
From an Apple store. But he came home for lunch today, and I was like, I half expect you to walk in one day, like arms extended out, and be saying, "One of us," like distracted by shiny Apple logos and not understand basic human speech. I'm just giving him a lot of crap. It's so much fun.
Apple stores are pretty cool places to work at. I had a girlfriend who worked in an Apple store once, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, he can't tell me about the training process he's going through, but he said it's very like what you would expect from Apple, which is very a lot of group activities and stuff, and it's like
like chanting, I would imagine.
Yeah, a lot of toss the ball and improv games and a lot of like run under the parachute. Yeah,
the clapping experience that you get when you walk in on an iPhone launch day.
God, yeah,
they do that for new employees.
Ugh.
I can't. Yeah. I was like, no, I'd walk out. I would not take the job. I couldn't do it.
I remember that. Oh God! And then, what was even weirder than that was watching a Microsoft store unveiling, which was an Apple store unveiling with different shirts
and no one there.
No, there were a ton of people there.
I'm kidding.
Anyway, okay. So closing out iOS, Touch ID might start working a bit better, says Stephen Schenk of Pocketnow.com.
Yeah, apparently there's a software update coming out, maybe not with 7.1, but if not then soon thereafter. That would do something to help improve Touch ID accuracy, because we got these reports last year of people having problems with Touch ID. It would work really well at first, but then over time they found that it would have trouble recognizing their fingerprints. They would have to retrain it, and this might fix that. We don't know how exactly yet, but fixing it sounds good.
If you can fix a display, an underperforming display with a software update, if you can fix an underperforming camera with a software update, which has been demonstrated by a few brands, I think Apple can manage to fix their fingerprint sensor.
I'm just worried, though, that this fix might be just dialing down the sensitivity. So, it'll recognize you more often, but half the population as well.
Yeah, starts responding to things other than
elbows.
You can already unlock your phone with a nipple, right?
So, but if you train it with that in the first place,
we've already reached peak absurdity. Good. Well, the iOS section is done. Wearables, we can't really talk about this, guys, but hey, wearables.
They exist.
They do exist.
Pebble Steel review.
The Gear line pricing has leaked. The Galaxy Glass patent has come through for Samsung, and I love Jaime's headline, it's close to what you think. Yeah, it probably is not going to look too great, but we'll talk about that on a future Wearables episode. And yes, the Pebble Steel review is up. It is, in fact, a smartwatch in disguise.
Smartwatch in disguise.
I saw this one before it went live in some form or another, and a very tired Taylor Martin is very fun to edit. But fun review, very thorough.
Whole paragraphs and blocks that made no sense.
I dodged that bullet.
You sure did, man. I should have been paid a bonus to edit that one. But, this is what happens when we're tired. The Pebble Steel review is very thorough. If you want to know everything about it, you should read that review. And I'm not just saying that. There's more in there than maybe even I want to know. And
2,500 words on a watch.
It's massive, but it's good. All right, guys, I am going to say right now that the news feature is closed. Thank you very much, Taylor, for joining us for the news. I'm going to let you get back to work on your editorial. Go tell us why dual booting is awesome/awful. Will you please?
I will, please. Vamp.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk to you. Steven, that was a really awesome laugh.
That was a chortle, technically.
It was like a Stewie laugh. Okay. Taylor,
goodbye.
Goodbye to you, friend.
See ya.
He's been called a leak artist, one of the best online reporters and thinkers, and even, according to Heaven, the great god of leaks in some Chinese forums. But it turns out the world's most famous phone leaker is quite human, after all. And he's a person whose history is inextricably intertwined with our own here at Pocketnow. Joining us for our feature segment today, Evan Blass, the heart and soul of EvLeaks and the former managing editor of Pocketnow, and former babysitter of news chief Stephen Shank. Evan, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
I'm so glad to talk to you again. We'll talk about the last time we spoke soon. But, Stephen, Evan, we'll get to the hard stuff in a few minutes. I got to tell you right now, I'm very interested in this babysitting thing. Can I hear that story?
Evan probably knows more than I do, but...
I mean, we were both quite young. I was only maybe 12, and even a few years younger than that. And our fathers were friends from work. They both worked at the same company. So I babysat Stephen and his even younger sister several times.
And we survived. It's fantastic.
Contrary to what you might want to hear, there's no hilarious stories.
That's all right. This is hilarious enough. I love that connection. I love envisioning you guys as, like 12-year-olds. That's hilarious.
Even funnier is probably the fact that Pocketnow was the second job that I recommended Stephen for, and that he was able to thrive at. I think at both jobs he outlasted me. So
Evan's been like my scout for finding work in the this online writing sector. Is he'll find a job and then I'll hear about it. I'll come into the ship. Then he'll, go his own way, do his Evan thing. I'll stick around for a while, and eventually end up following wherever he ended up going. So who knows where that will take us next? But it's been a fun ride so far.
Well, I sure hope that you don't go anywhere, Stephen, but I think it is a very, very funny bit of connection. When was this, by the way, guys? Stephen, when did you come on board?
Pocketnow?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, 11 maybe, or 10?
I was going through, Evan, some of your old posts at Pocketnow preparatory to this show, and actually earlier in the news segment we mentioned an editorial you wrote back in 2011, 2012 called The iPhoneification of the Galaxy line, which was a lot of fun. So it's nice to kind of probe your history here every now and then.
That is fun. I do that sometimes myself.
The last time we spoke on the phone, listeners, the last time Evan and I shared a voice line, Evan was proofreading my first review ever. And not just for Pocketnow. Like, Pocketnow is the first site I've ever worked at in mobile. And I had just written my first review, and I had been dispatched to do it. I'd been given a mandate to get it up by an embargo time. And then the person who gave me that mandate was not available when I didn't know how to do things like, put a gallery of photos in. So I was like, well, I'm screwed. Who's this Evan guy? Evan seems to be in charge of something. Let me contact him. And Evan came on the phone and walked me through some very important and crucial things, and is the reason that I know how to refer to companies as it and not they, which is a lot of fun, and other kind of very fun things. But that was the last time we spoke, Evan. That was like 2 years ago. Yeah,
and just to clarify, though, in Europe they do refer to companies as they.
Yes.
So really, either one is correct.
Yeah, but in the States, to adhere to the formatting model we were using, I was like, and I think I was doing it inconsistently too. Like, whatever it was, I was way wrong. And then you were like, oh, hey, just do this. I'm like, oh, hey, thanks, man.
Yeah, when I started before we were at Pocketnow, when I was at Obsessible, I remember there was a lengthy period of time with Evan constantly being on me about all the awful style mistakes I was making. And because of that, I'm the writer I am today, with him, guiding me along and showing me the ropes. So that's what he does.
It's definitely awesome, because I still see, when I read your pieces, Stephen, which I do all the time, obviously, I still see like the echoes of the Evan style. And not just from Pocketnow, from Engadget as well. Like I was reading, Evan, I was reading your posts before I knew anything about anything, and it took me until this year to realize just how far back in the space your history goes.
Yeah, it makes me feel really old. Thanks, guys.
Not at all. I don't even know how old you are, but I'm certainly like, I get made fun of on this show all the time for being the old timer, but that's because I'm a curmudgeon, not because of age. Stephen, I wonder if you guys have any further nostalgic bits to probe before I know you do have to get back to the news beat. So.
Oh, well, that we can actually talk about on the air? I don't know.
Yes.
Anything hit your mind, Evan?
No, I think everything that the listeners need to know, they've heard already.
Cool. Well, Stephen, thank you for sticking around for the top of this and performing the reintroduction, as it were.
Oh, no problem.
We'll see you on the other side, man.
All right. I can't wait to hear when I finally listen to this Evan's opinions on how to leak smartphone information without getting your parents fired. It's going to be the lesson of the week.
Yes, it is.
All right.
See you, man. Yeah, Evan, earlier we were talking about this all new HTC One leak, this rather unorthodox 12-minute video filmed by a 14-year-old. We'll get back to that in a second. Surely you know what I'm referring to.
I do.
Yeah. Well, before we get into all that, let's just kind of start out with something a little broader. Let's hit our listeners with some numbers here. With 141,000 followers, the EvLeaks Twitter account is ranked just below. It's 11,839th in the world by followers, according to Twitterholic. Your tweets, Evan, are hand-translated into 10 foreign editions. You hold an accuracy rating of 96% on Sourced.com, and your leaks are routinely sourced by some of the biggest news organizations out there. In short, you're internet famous. So what's that like?
It's kind of funny. And it's great in a way because I'm, as you know, I have multiple sclerosis, so yes. I'm challenged, as it were, I guess, in terms of mobility. I can still walk, but it's harder for me to get around than the average person. Mm-hmm. So to be internet famous for me is to, I'm on the internet all the time, and to get fan mail, to have people write me, asking to be, to be part of the organization, as it were, any way they can. All of these foreign editions, these translators, they weren't people that I sought out. Certainly, it's all been volunteers that have written in.
So all 10 foreign transcribers are volunteers?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
The only thing I ask is that they commit to, doing it for a certain amount of time, so that, I'm not constantly opening up sites or feeds and then closing them down when, people get bored or, don't want to do it anymore.
Right. Now, what about the day-to-day life aspect of it? Like when you're not, when you're not on the internet, at times you interact with people in the real world. And what do you tell people that you do in that case?
I say, I'm going to tell you what I do, and you're not going to understand, and then I'll clarify. And that's what I say. I leak phones.
Exactly. Do most people understand that? Like, do most people get what that means? I feel like my vision of the world is such that other people out there are like, wait, phones get leaked? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no one gets it. It doesn't make sense. The word, you know the words, but together they don't mean anything to you. So right. I tell them that I post imagery and information about unannounced devices on a Twitter feed. And, how do you make money off of that? And, I'm just starting to with sponsorships, with, sending out one sponsored tweet per day, trying to be able to do that.
So you have that real world interaction with people who do. You have to make them understand what a leaker is. But even in our field, like even within the world that we exist in, there is confusion, I think. There is a debate about what constitutes a leaker. And we've talked about this before, about the difference between, say, like a beat journalist under a publications banner and a leak artist like yourself. Do you think, what's the difference? I mean, do you think there is one?
I think that it's interesting, and I don't know the exact answer to that, but we have discussed this before about whether what I do is journalism or not, and I don't know. You could look at it both ways. I don't want to at least publicly weigh in on it so much.
Right.
I haven't really given it enough thought in a recent amount of time.
It's a really, really fun, like, gray area to kind of play mental games with. And I think this isn't the only field that gets that kind of scrutiny, right? I mean, there's a lot of gray areas when it comes to journalism. Did you see this is off topic, but did you see the Newsweek story today about the Bitcoin founder?
I did. You know what? It's funny that I was thinking about that just before we came on air, and I was like, there's no way he would bring that up. There's, it's so unrelated to smartphones. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting because, in my mind at least, that had just been a story. I thought that Bitcoin had probably been founded by, a group of people for, whatever purposes.
Right.
So I'm surprised that it was really the same, a person by the same name that he gave on the forums when he started it.
Yeah, and there was a giant debate that followed the publication of the story with regard to kind of the usual arguments that pop up, like journalism versus privacy and things of that sort. And I think it was a really interesting debate because Newsweek ran a picture of the guy's house with a car in the driveway and a license plate that was visible and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of us have kind of gone around and around about it on Twitter about whether this is proper or not. And it seems that Newsweek has adapted to that a little bit and like taken that photo off and then replaced it minutes later. It's been a really interesting kind of little thread to follow, and I think there's some cool discussions that are being had around that issue, which are not unrelated to some of the things that you do.
Leaks are certainly seen by many publications out there as big news, high priority, get it up right away.
Yeah, and your leaks in particular, I mean, you've been sourced by, of course, all the usual suspects online, like us and Engadget and so on, but, like CBS, right? And ABC News, and you've been sourced on broadcast media as well, right?
Yeah, sure. Just today, someone sent me a little clip of the Chromebook 2 leak on the Solar News Network in the Philippines. It's a regular broadcast news program, and it was fun to see leaks underneath in the type there. So yeah.
I want to ask you. You've said in an interview before you kind of self-identified when EvLeaks was still a mystery brand, you said that some of the most intoxicating moments for you are right before you hit the button on a leak, just before you push it public, when you're one of the only people in the world who knows about it. Is that thrill still there after doing this for so long?
Sometimes, yeah. Probably less so. It's a hard question to answer, I guess. I don't think that. I don't know.
I guess it would depend on the what you're leaking, right?
Yeah, that is a big part of it. But I think that since that interview, I've probably gone downhill physically quite a bit, and so what I'm doing online and what I'm doing mentally, it's not it hasn't been as important to me. So it really takes something that's out there to sort of catch my attention. Otherwise, I'm sort of focused on how bad I feel.
Mm. You've got the nose to the grindstone and just kind of trying to get through the work. In other words,
yeah. I know it's an uncomfortable topic. You want to come on sort of a show like this, and but that's the truth for me is day in and day out. It's pretty painful. Despite the fact that I'm on quite a few painkillers.
Painkillers which are not as easy to get as they once were, as I read, and you were interviewed for a Verge piece on that, right?
Yeah, that was quite a big deal at the time, and it's still a big deal for a lot of people in this country, that they're really cracking down on the ability to get prescription pain medication to the legitimate patients who have totally good prescriptions from doctors are getting denied because of very stringent policies at certain pharmacies.
This is a weird question, but what does it do for your perspective? Obviously, it's difficult to do anything when you're in that degree of pain, but also when that is weighing on your mind so often, does it kind of make the business of leaking seem somewhat more trivial? Yeah,
and maybe that's why I can do it more casually than some other people could. Mm-hmm. Wow, this is getting pretty deep here.
Yeah, I know. Didn't mean to drive you to the place. I do have some specific questions about leaking, but I feel like this is important, right? It's like I feel like we can get really wrapped up, those of us in the tech space, about the most minute of details, and then it serves you to take a step back and realize that, wow, I'm arguing over clock cycles on a chip, in a handheld product designed by a group of people that all they want to do is make money. Like, there's more to this life than that, right?
Yeah, sure there is. But I think on the reverse, sometimes when, from my perspective, being in quite a lot of discomfort, it sometimes helps to focus on things like that, on the phones and their specs and what information's been released, because focusing on that takes my focus away from, how I feel physically.
Maybe it's that focus that explains how exactly you stay so accurate. It's ridiculous. You're unsourced. You're number 4 in terms of accuracy. You're above, right now, you're above people like Kara Swisher and Mary Jo Foley, like other revered names in this business, by a couple percentage points. But you're up there on that leaderboard. I mean, yet you don't have a staff backing you up, necessarily. You don't have a big staff. You don't have a newsroom. I mean, that's astounding. Do you think it's the focus that has given you the ability to stay that accurate?
I think it's maybe that, probably more. At this point, I have a little bit of experience in this industry.
Yeah.
Putting up the news. I think I had over 2,500 news posts at Engadget, and another site, Accessible, a couple hundred there. Probably close to 1,000 at Pocketnow. It was. It's been quite educational to do news for that long and to get to speak to that many people and
hone the craft, as it were.
Yeah, just learning how to learning the game, basically.
So I want to ask, I have to ask this question, and I understand that you probably don't want to answer it, but I have to ask it. It's a very simple question. How do you do it? How do you be one of the best leakers in the world?
I think that if I answered that question, that other people would.
Soon you would not be one of the best leakers in the world because people would steal your approach.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like asking like a magician, hey, how do you do it? How are the tricks done?
How does the magic happen? Right, of course. No, I understand that, and that's the answer I expected. So that's fine. I already asked you the more important question, which is how you stay so accurate. But I have another question, and I would like, if it's possible, I would love an answer on this. What would you say to the people who think that what you do is illegal?
I would tell them that I don't want to answer this question.
Well, that's valid.
I'd have to answer something like that.
No, that makes sense. I understand. What about what about immoral? Do you think that what you do is immoral at all?
Fair question. Morality is such a sliding scale. I mean, there's no one set of morals that are absolute and that can be agreed upon by even people within one religion. Say, it all depends on your perspective. I mean, there's thousands of people, professional people, upstanding people, God-fearing people who are heavily into my leaks. And to me, if people who are moral think it's okay and are consuming them, then it is moral. But on the other hand, if you look at it from the perspective of people who are affected by the leaks, especially the people who work at OEMs and the people who work for the people who work at OEMs, who are all trying to put this package together, this phone package, this launch presentation, then you can make quite a few arguments that it is immoral. So I'm not going to really opine too much on that, other than to say that I definitely see both arguments.
It's interesting. David Reddick at Android Police, who conducted an interview with you before, put it that almost every success for EvLeaks is a failure for someone, which I think is a very succinct way to put it. But I agree that this morality discussion factors right back into that same gray area we were talking about before. These are the questions that journalists have wrestled with for decades.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, leaks will serve to provide extra publicity, an extra day, an extra 2 days of being in the limelight that a product would not have had. And ultimately, that's what the people involved with its manufacturer are looking for, is to, get it as widespread as possible. And I think I said in another interview, the people who are affected by leaks are also consuming leaks. I can count among my followers quite a few people who work for the OEMs and the carriers. So, it is, like you said, a gray area. It's a mixed bag. It's never cut and dry when it comes to this.
I feel like it's part of the damage control strategy when something gets leaked for maybe an OEM to come out afterwards and say, yeah, that was to have this tongue-in-cheek attitude of like, yeah, we probably let some of those leaks out intentionally. How often does that actually happen? I mean, is that all damage control? Is that all face saving on their part, or do you run into controlled leaks at points when you're like people approach you to leak stuff?
I have done some controlled leaks for sure. That doesn't happen all the time, but especially as my follower base grows, I think that it's being seen as more of a legitimate audience. Most of whom, at least, are pretty passionate about cell phones, about the exact product that the makers of these leaked products want to sell to.
That's a good point. I wonder about that strategy. We sometimes openly wonder on this show, actually, quite often. We see a leak, whether it bears your watermark or not, where it's like, oh wow, I really wonder if there's so many of these leaks that are coming. I really wonder if some of these are intentional, because they certainly do up the buzz, don't they?
Yeah. Especially as, a product is very close to launch, it really just gives it an extra day or two in the spotlight, because no matter how big your launch is, there's always going to be people that just weren't paying attention to the news that day. And, but those people might pay attention to the news the day before or the next day. Mm-hmm. So, if you want to capture as many people as possible, you do whatever you can to keep your product of interest for as long as possible. And leaks they do help in that.
Let me ask you that question I started to ask you before, that all new HTC One leak. This kid, Roshan, posted a 12-minute, very rough hands-on video. We talked about it in the news segment earlier. When you're watching this, when you're watching someone who's an amateur, who's maybe doing it for whatever reason, but is new to the game, posting something like that, as a professional leak artist, say, how does that make you feel? Like, is it entertaining? Is it cringeworthy? What?
It's funny because I didn't even catch wind of that until an HTC executive started to tweet back and forth directly with this individual. And so I thought it was kind of, I don't know if ironic is the right word, but it was just funny that, unless if he hadn't, made such a big deal out of it, a lot of people wouldn't even caught wind of this footage.
So you think it's a better policy sometimes to just shut up and not pay a leak any credence if you're an OEM?
Yeah, I think especially if you're someone on Twitter who has followers who are news editors, if you start bringing it up and they'll when you're one of these people who starts tweeting a lot and in a defensive way, it's going to attract some interest, and especially among the editors and journalists who happen to follow you.
The obvious follow-up to that is, do you think that does that lend any credence to a conspiracy theory? Do you think that whole thing was planned?
No, I don't. I don't think that didn't come off to me as something that was a plot.
No. It didn't seem so, but it was worth the question. Yeah. Do you think that I mean, that was a pretty detailed video, for all its shortcomings. The kid did his absolute best to cover as many elements of the device as possible. I mean, would you, do you see any potential for that particular person?
Well, he's certainly got moxie. I don't know what the right word is.
Moxie's exactly right. Guile.
But hey, I don't know. Maybe once he's done dealing with the trouble that he gets in for this, he'll come out of it, a better journalist.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, most often, speaking of the tech, this is a business about the tech and not the people behind it. Occasionally you'll get a comment where it's like, stop talking about yourself so much. Just show me the phones. I don't care about you. And you mentioned in another interview that your coming out, your kind of self-identification, when you identified that you were EvLeaks, had all the impact of, well, nothing, was your quote. Do you ever wish...
Well, part of it was, I was very obtuse in the way that I revealed myself. It wasn't just like I put my name out there. I put two lists out, basically, and you sort of had to think about it for a while and to really examine both documents before you would be able to say, like, oh, hey, that's what he's trying to tell us, is that he's EvLeaks. So I don't know if it quite speaks to your point that people don't care who we are.
I think this business, I think people tune in obviously to see the news, to hear opinions, and to get content about the technology. But I guess
especially to work here, I think maybe that it might make me more of interest than other guests.
Yeah. Well, I think so. I mean, do you ever wish for more personal identification with it? I mean, I guess
this is much more personal than I usually get, and I usually want to get. If you're listening to the show, you're one of the rare people that are hearing me sort of open up about my personal life and my disease pretty openly. Much more than I've done so under the guise of EvLeaks before. So,
I mean, that's been a trend recently. Is it because of the state of your disease, or for another reason?
What, that I'm opening up a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just because I like you, Michael, and you're making me feel like it's just me and you chatting here.
Thanks.
You're editorial director.
Yeah,
that's your title there.
It is from rookie to ED in 2 years.
a good kind of ED, though.
I beg your pardon?
Well, there's a few kinds of ED.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, when Brandon was here, he used to every time I sent him a monthly report, he would call it the ED report, and we would have a chuckle. Do you ever miss being part of a team? Not necessarily Pocketnow or Engadget. Do you ever miss that? Do you ever want to be back in that environment of being on being less the lone wolf and more of the pack, as it were, to use a tired analogy?
Sure, I miss working with people, but I do work with people. I mean, it's not like I'm just sitting here by myself. A lot of my job is to have conversations and to be in contact with people all over the world. Mm-hmm. And, as EvLeaks, I've really had an opportunity to meet just a ton of people that I never would have come across, just as Evan Blass, the writer or the editor. It's been an amazing opportunity.
Why don't we move into a couple reader questions, if you are amenable to that? Sound all right?
Yeah, let's do it.
This one is from Death Metal Mods, who's one of our Twitter followers, a friend of the show. I wonder how you're able to decide for a new device when you already know far in advance what's coming next. I think the question is, I wonder how you decide what to buy. Normal users already get crazy when the new iPhone, etc., is 7 months away without knowing anything. So as a professional leak collector, how do you ever decide on a new phone? Or doesn't it influence you at all? Good question.
I mean, the real answer to that question is people who read a previous interview know is that it really just doesn't come into play. I mean, I was using a cracked Samsung phone for quite a while.
So, that makes sense. Actually, speaking of that, I too cracked the screen on my Samsung phone. So you are not alone. I don't want you to feel badly about that.
Oh, thanks, man.
No problem. And Death Metal wants to close us out by saying, EvLeaks, hey, thanks for helping us users get the occasional glimpse into the future. Oh, that's nice.
That would help.
Moving on to the next one. This is from Tom Bosch. Dear Michael, I've got one question for EvLeaks. Is there any way any phone manufacturing company will release a high-end dual SIM phablet? Thanks, Tom. Evan, I doubt Tom is asking you specifically for a leak, but I think just the question of the trend is there. Do you see that happening anytime soon? I feel like that's a very niche type of area.
Dual SIM is getting bigger and bigger, so I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that happen. I think we're already seeing at least some medium tier phablets that are going the dual SIM route. So yeah, I definitely think that'll happen within, say, the next 12 months. There's a ton of people in developing markets moving from feature phones to smartphones, and the feature phones in these markets for a long time have been dual SIM. So that's a characteristic that is highly sought after as these people make the move from feature to smart.
Speaking of specific questions, this one is from Thomas Cibrian. This is from way back in February. I was really excited when I saw the Nexus 10 render you put out, EvLeaks. Then you said it might be fake. What made you think it was fake? And is there a chance it might be real?
What it was a guy was sending out stuff material to multiple sites and people. And it seems to me that it was quite obviously a fake. It had all the signs of. He sent it out to a few places. No one picked it up. So then he sent some quote unquote backup material that was supposedly, to make it look more realistic. And it did look more realistic until I spoke to other people who had gotten the same material, and we compared, and it was quite obvious that it was someone screwing around. So I would say there's no chance that product is coming to market whatsoever.
That's a shame, but it's part of the reality of dealing with pre-release information. So thank you for answering that.
I try to be as accurate as possible, and I think, at least to my credit on that one, I was quite clear in the leak that it was sent in with via a tip. I could not verify the information at all. I was just a conduit passing something along.
Right. Well, finally, I think that does it for the listener mail. If we didn't get to your piece of listener mail, we actually answered it earlier in the interview. So there's a couple questions that came in that we directly addressed in some of my questions earlier. So thank you, everyone, for writing in. So one final question, if you're up for it. This is from me, and this is what I like to ask anybody in the industry. But what would you say to someone who wanted to make a future for himself or herself in your particular field of journalism, this phone leak world? Do you have any advice?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, this is one type of thing where it's like, it's really a one-off, I mean, I don't know anyone else who tries to do this professionally, and I don't think there's any particular, one skill that you need to have or that you could develop. It's, at least I feel with me, it really was, a bunch of individual things that came together to allow me to do this with some acumen. So unfortunately, I don't think I can answer that for just a random person, how they could do that.
Would you recommend it? Choosing this profession, as it were?
Probably not. Well, I don't know. I think that it's for my particular situation, it's worked out just because it would be, I can't work full time, and it would be more difficult for me to go out there and get a job in a traditional field than it would have been when I was more mobile. So it's hard to say. I don't know if I would recommend it. There are certain risks involved, and it's not as steady or as stable a life as a lot of people need. Certainly, if I was married, if I had kids, I couldn't live like this, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, it's tailored to a very specific lifestyle.
Yeah. It was, like I said, a very specific combination of traits or of characteristics that put me in this position.
I want to give you the opportunity before we close out. We got pretty deep before, and then we got back to specifics. But before we close it out for the day, obviously your medical situation has a big impact on your day-to-day life. Is there anywhere that people can go to learn more, to donate to the cause, as it were?
Well, there's the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, and they have a website, and they're really the go-to resource for information about MS. And obviously, you can give donations there too if you want to help the cause, but that's probably the number one place that people. I don't know the website off the top of my head.
I'll dig it up, and we'll drop the link in the show notes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's easily enough Googled too. So I think that's really the best resource for anyone who's looking for information or to help.
Well, Evan, I want to thank you. This has been a blast. Obviously, we've wanted to do this for a really long time, and I'm really glad it finally came together. Thanks for your insights, which we could not have gotten from anyone else in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I'll come back again at your beck and call.
I would love it. I was just going to say, please don't be a stranger to the weekly. Let's definitely have you on again.
Excellent.
Folks, if you're wondering about our new transition music, that track, the one that led us into our feature and the one playing behind me right now, is called Radiation. You may recognize it as one of the ringtones on your Nexus 4 or Galaxy Nexus, but it's a real song by a real musician called Ali Spagnola, an artist with literally millions of fans and a very cool touring concept for her concerts called Power Hour, which is a lot of fun if you're over the legal drinking age. I think I have to say that. Ali has a bunch of very, very fun videos, and I'm not just saying that, she is hilarious, at her new YouTube channel, youtube.com/AliSpags, and at her website, alispagnola.com. If you can't spell them, they're both linked in the description below here on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, they are in the show notes, and at Pocketnow, they're on the rundown. Thank you to Ali for allowing us to license her music, which is awesome. That's going to do it for this episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. Thanks for joining us, folks. And again, thank you for all your listener mail every week. We love it. And even if it doesn't make it to the airwaves, we do read every piece sent to us at podcast@pocketnow.com. Also, be sure to find us on Twitter. Stephen is at Stephen Shank. Taylor is at Casper Tech. I am at Captain Two Phones. And of course, Evan Blass is at EvLeaks. You can also follow Pocketnow officially at Pocketnow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Google+. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a review. iTunes, Xbox Music, Stitcher, wherever else podcasts are heard. As always, our heartfelt thanks for listening, and we'll be back with more mobile tech talk next week. My skin began flaking off as though I were a radiation patient.
Oh, that's not normal, I don't believe.
No, it's not cool at all. It's not cool at all. Taylor, Jesus Christ. Taylor just shouldered his way through a wall to get onto this podcast. Yeah,
Kool-Aid!
So anyway, my skin, yeah, oh yeah. So my skin starts falling off my face, and I'm like, what am I going to do about this? And then I realized that no, in fact, I had just eaten a peanut butter sandwich and gotten some of it on my face, and now it was in my razor. And then I was like, okay, I should probably shower more often.
And practice eating, I guess.
I missed the important part of that whole conversation.
Yeah, no, I think you got the important part. Yeah.